just a brief snapshot into the 2015-2020 dietary guidelines. There are 5 main points that they've decided to kind of focus on that are different from previous ones. So the first guideline is to follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. The second one that they chose to focus on is focusing on variety of nutrients, density, and amount. The third is limiting what I like to think of as the 3 S's, so added sugar, sodium, and saturated fat. The fourth topic that they chose to focus on is shifting to healthier food and beverage choices. And the fifth is supporting healthy eating patterns for all. Okay, so kind of delving into that first topic, eating patterns. So what does that really even mean? So they kind of tried to give a perspective as to what an eating pattern means in terms of the guidelines. And it kind of aligns with the My Plate idea. So if any of you are familiar with that, basically what they're trying to have the goal is getting a variety of the nutrients. So half fruits and vegetables should be your plate, and then a quarter should be whole grains, or they aim for about 50% or more whole grains, and then a quarter of the plate should be lean proteins or protein alternatives. So the whole guideline behind that, so that's their eating pattern. But what they want you to think about is more long-term solution. So in today's society, we're looking for quick answers, it's fast-paced, and so they really want us to kind of take a step back and look, okay, how can we fit this into our everyday life and keep these changes going? And so by kind of trying to include more of a bigger picture, so again, aiming for half that plate fruits and vegetables versus, I need 3 to 5 servings of this in a day. If you can just kind of visualize it, instead of focusing on a specific amount, you're more likely to stick to it. So that's kind of the basis behind that. And then kind of reiterating that, you want to be eating foods that you enjoy. So again, that's going to make the changes that you make last longer. So instead of necessarily cutting out something completely, like if you love pizza and if you eliminate that, you're likely going to go back to it at some point. You're going to walk past a pizza shop, it's going to smell really good, probably not going to stick to it. So instead, how can we modify that so that it's healthier and you can still continue to eat it? Maybe you start making your own. Maybe you take down some of the cheese and you add more veggies to it or some more lean protein. It's a good way to kind of find that balance and still eat what you enjoy but make it a little healthier. And so they provide examples of those healthy eating patterns in these new guidelines. Okay, and so the second point is to eat a variety of foods. And this is something you've probably heard, and honestly it kind of, I think, combines with the first guideline that they give you. But really what they're trying to give you a perspective on is eating those nutrient-dense foods. And so what they mean by nutrient-dense is that if you're comparing, say, 100 calories of grapes to 100 calories of soda, those 100 calories from the grapes are going to give you more nutrients than the soda alone. And so you want to try and focus on those so that you can keep that health up, because the more nutrients you can get, the better you're going to be for preventing risk of chronic diseases. So that's the big focus with that. And then they also touch a little bit in this second guideline on kind of trying to keep perspective of different portion sizes, because as the time has gone on, our idea of what a large size is keeps increasing. And so we really need to kind of hone in on that and look at portion sizes and kind of be more realistic and kind of try and slim it down if possible. So if we're going for the big gulp here in 1990, this is an outdated photo here. Maybe you want to try and either make that a diet soda or, try and maybe only have a third of it and save the rest for later. Okay, third point, reducing the 3 S's. So again, these are not necessarily things that are new, but they're still important to bring up. So added sugars is the first one we'll talk about, and the recommendations that they have for the 2015-2020 guidelines is to make up less than 10% of your total calories. Now, from a nutritional standpoint, I think that this is kind of a little hazy because right now the nutrition facts don't necessarily state what's added and what's not. So what I would say is, instead of necessarily focusing on less than 10%, just kind of try and take note of the ingredient list. How much added sugar is in that in terms of how high up on the ingredient list is it. If it's in the top 3, it's probably pretty high up there. So just try and limit that. If you see an added sugar source, so sucrose, things like that, even honey. Try and kind of limit those towards the end of the ingredient list if possible when you're eating things. Just be conscious of it. The second point, saturated fats. This is, again, less than 10% of your total calories throughout the day. This has not changed since the 2020 or the 2010 guidelines, so it's just being conscious of that, and that's just to keep your heart healthy, because there have been studies that have shown that saturated fat does increase your risk of cardiac disease, so they want to try and keep that risk down. However, these guidelines did drop the recommendation for limiting cholesterol, and that's because after evaluating the current scientific research behind that, the high cholesterol foods, so if you guys have heard anything about cholesterol-rich things like egg yolks and limiting those, or seafood, they're not really recommending that anymore. There's not strong evidence that supports that eating those types of foods that are high in cholesterol increase your risk of cardiac disease. So we've kind of gotten rid of that, which I think is great. And then the last one is just keeping that sodium down. So right now the recommendations are to keep it 2,300 milligrams or lower. That might not be easy to kind of gauge, but just, again, look at that nutrition label and kind of see where it's at. Unfortunately, a lot of products in today's market are high in sodium, so just try and look for those reduced or no salt added items when possible. And then just to kind of give you a perspective, on average, Americans are eating 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day, so likely, just being conscious of that and kind of looking at what you're eating can help kind of get those numbers back into check. And the fourth point is shifting to healthier food and beverage choices. So with this, I think this also kind of goes with the first and the second guideline. So it's just about kind of making those baby steps towards healthier choices. So you can make those lifelong changes versus those short-term diet changes. So the picture of it is illustrated here. You're not necessarily going to jump from chicken nuggets to a big bowl of salad with a little bit of chicken on it. So how can you make that transition more likely to last long? So chicken nugget to a grilled chicken sandwich, eat that for a while. Then try switching it to putting that chicken on a bigger salad with a lot more items on it, and then whittling it down to really just a bare salad with a little bit of chicken. If that works for you, it's all about finding that balance. And that's what the focus is with that specific guideline. And then the last point that they make is just supporting the healthy eating patterns. So they keep talking about it, they keep mentioning this healthy eating patterns, but how are we going to get that to actually change? How are we going to get that to reach the people that need it? And that's what they talk about with this guideline. So they emphasize the need for collective action to help facilitate healthy lifestyle choices at home, school, work, and the community. And the big point that they make with this support is that they want healthy eating patterns to be easy, accessible, affordable, and normal. So how are we going to do that? Well, everyone has a role is kind of the way that the guidelines play it right now. So whether you're a school teacher, a police worker, or you're just a stay-at-home mom, everyone has a role in making a healthy eating pattern and making those changes. So everyone needs to band together and have resources to help get this change moving. And so that's kind of what this guideline sets out to do. And then just to summarize everything all, kind of wrap everything up, I like to think of the big changes here that we've talked about as really just balancing. Life gets crazy, and especially in such a fast-paced society, it's easy to kind of lose sight, and a lot of times diet and nutrition kind of gets left to the wayside, or we pick the things that are easy and convenient. So how can we try and make lifelong changes that still work with your lifestyle? I think this picture illustrates it perfectly. So it's just about balancing on that line and just continuing to move forward. All right, and that's all I have. Thank you for listening.